Welcome back, my friends, to Pennies in Your Path. Well, I hope and pray that today's message will once again help you in your journey of moving your doubts in God to fully trust in Him. And as you can see, I've already got an amazing friend with me. Well, I say you can see, I know some of you are just listening on the podcast, but I have with me today a dear friend of mine, Suzanne Clark.
Hello.
She's so much fun. She's got a shirt on today. If you're listening to this, not watching it, it says joy. And that is exactly just kind of a nutshell of her personality. We met a couple of years ago, and it was just kind of like a meet and greet, like, hello, hey, my name's Jodi, you're Suzanne, nice to meet you. And we parted our own ways. And it wasn't up until very recently, well, I'll say very recently, it's going on nearly 7 months ago, where in God's divine appointment that He would draw you to want to be a part of what we call leadership pipeline at our church at Englewood Baptist Church. And I happen to be leading one of the sessions as far as one of the groups that is in that. And somehow or another, God orchestrated that we would be in the same group. And life has not been the same. Life has not been the same since then.
Well, I joke with you, Jodi, that you are attending my church.
Right.
And you like to call it our church. We struggle with that because your husband is the pastor. So, I think it's very confident of me to say it's my church, but that's just because I love my church. But I love you guys. And, we just couldn't be any more blessed to have both of you in leadership positions. I say that because you have a leadership position as well. But yeah, I'm so glad that God had us cross paths. Leadership pipeline has just been, the study itself is awesome, but we've got 7 people who have bonded and become friends and just truly love each other. And that's probably the best part of it. So yeah, good for God to figure out a way when we couldn't figure out a way, to connect.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just really neat. And we've been discovering over time some other purposes perhaps that He has had us to connect together. So that's been a fun journey as He's just been unfolding that as we go. But one of the things that I know that my listeners is going to love about you is that you have an amazing sense of wit about you, some dry and fun humor. Yeah, we'll see.
I'm reining it in today. I'm reeling it in a little.
You're going to rein it in. Don't do that. Don't do that. I want everybody to get the real Suzanne. I want them to know the person that I know, because I love the person that I know. So, Suzanne, why don't you just share with my friends a little bit more about who you are and what you do in life?
Sure. So I am married to Dewey. I always start out that way because I've been married to him longer than I have not been married to him. So it feels like my whole life, but that's a good thing. We have 2 kids. Blakely is our oldest, and she is married to Jackson. And we have Nick, who is our youngest son. And Blakely and Jackson have little Levi, who is just the most perfect little fella in the world.
Adorable.
I just cannot get enough of Levi. And they also have a little Dachshund that I just love way too much. I think a lot of days.
No, wait, I'm going to stop you right there. No, she's infatuated with this dog. Like, she even has a welcome mat with the dog and just throughout her. And the dog's not even hers. It's her grand dog.
But
do you have oh my gosh.
It starts to get like people that have too many cats, and everybody knows it, and it's like, that's the cat lady. I'm trying to find that balance between it not being like a neurosis, where people are talking about me. But I love that little dog. So she's a little just gift from God. There you go.
I love it. Well, and I also want my friends to know that you're a 2-time author. You have authored the book Cry Out to Jesus, and then Blessed Be the Tie.
Yep. And so yeah, and I'll just say just a couple of sentences about that. So the first book kind of came out of not planning to be a book, but we had just a really tragic loss in our life. And it was a way for God to say, Suzanne, let me just show you all I've done in your life. And I wrote it down. And that just kind of helped me get through it. It was very much a healing process for me. Never wrote it thinking anybody was going to read it. God had other plans, and that book, we've used that book a lot to minister to people, and other people have used it. So that's been a huge blessing. But it's a very heavy, it's a heavy book. It's not my personality really. So the second one, I thought we're going to have fun with the second one. And it was the culmination of blogs that I'd written for the paper. They all have a Christian or a Christian story or a message in them, but it's fun. And it was just about life at that time. And so now it feels kind of dated because that was published in 2016. So our kids were both at home and they were little, and just crazy stuff was going on all the time. And so I never lacked for material. So yeah.
And now with your dog and your grandson, I mean, you really don't lack
It's a
material.
new generation of material over here.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm probably offering you some material as well.
Appreciate that. I'm all about new material.
Yeah, no, that's good. So, I love that. So what I want to do is just kind of transition now and go ahead and start talking about what the Lord laid on your heart. Because as we were praying through, just having this conversation, the Lord gave you something kind of specific to talk about, and it's about pursuing the purpose that He has in your life, and just in an interesting way. So why don't you go ahead and start unfolding a little bit about what He just kind of gave you?
Sure. So I love the sports analogies. I love when Paul talks about running a race. And I said to you, this would have been an even better message if I were a runner. It would have been just perfect, but I'm not. I ran one time about
you like pickleball. Yeah, you're a pickleball player, not a runner.
That's about the extent of my running is on one side of a half a court there. So not a runner, but I still understand the message, and it still just resonates with me. So I love that he talks about our walk with the Lord as running a race, and that's how we live our life. And there's a story that my mom used to tell, and I love the story because I think it just is a great picture of how we should be, how we should get up every day and run our race. So they had a horse. They had several horses. They had one that was named Dan, and Dan had the most personality of the horses that they owned. Dan wanted to be first. Dan was definitely the alpha male horse, if that is even such a thing. And he had an appointment with his food bowl or food trough at the end of the day. And nothing was going to hinder that. He was willing to do whatever it took to be first and to get there well ahead of the other horses. So they, if the day started kind of getting to an end and he could see, we're almost done, he would kind of watch what the other horses were doing. And if they were catching up to him, he'd pick up his gait. And he didn't care who he drug along with him. He didn't care what that meant. If it was like, we're going to just forget the rest of this job, but I'm going to go eat. And so sometimes that would be just full out running and racing back to the barn. And so I thought about that, and I was like, he was laser focused on something. He wasn't hindered. He was willing to do whatever it took. And that's a picture of what we're supposed to do. I mean, we're supposed to get up every day and be laser focused on, what does God have for me today? What does He want to do in my life? And that should set our priorities. And then, the way we live our race, the things we do, either they glorify Him or they don't. And that should be, our kind of decision point is which way are we going to go? So I just love that story. It's just a cute little, analogy, but something I can understand, and it's just fun to think about. So
yeah, I think we can all picture that, and picture that bowl that Dan is aiming
right.
and determined to go after, and that laser focus. And I love the idea that nothing is going to hinder him, not at all. So what are some tips or some ideas of how we can be unhindered, if you will?
I think a lot of it is just how we begin. How do we start each day? And I think when you're living for, and we've talked about this, that audience of one. I've heard so many speakers use that phrase that our audience of one is Jesus. And when we get in our mind, we wake up in the morning and we say, today I'm going to live for that audience of one. That orchestrates what we do next. So is that I'm going to spend time in his word because I'm living for him. So what does he want me to do? Am I going to serve? Does he want me to tell someone, share the gospel with someone? Does he want me to go and do something that day that lives out his will for me? And so I think, starting the day with that focus, I think being in the word immediately where he can speak to you personally. And then just kind of having that awareness, that heart to go all day, I'm going to refocus because the world's going to pull us in a million different directions. And we've got to kind of reel it back in and go, no, I'm laser focused. I'm going to live for that audience of one. And sometimes it takes just physically stopping. And maybe it's just praying and saying, refocus me, get me on what I'm supposed to be doing, because we can just get off on just so many things. And some of them are not even bad things, which is confusing, I think. But, I think that's my message is you have to start right. You have to start that day with that focus.
Right. No, that's very valuable. I recently have been trying to refocus myself, and then somebody really challenged me to ask the question of myself, what are the things that I know that God has called me to, and what are the things that I have I want to do, and I have somehow kind of overlapped the lines because it just marries up so beautifully. So I'm becoming more aware of the distractions and things that are hindering me from staying focused on the goal that he has. And so here on Pennies in Your Path, the whole premise behind that goes back to the years that God has laid pennies in my path to help me refocus, to help me go, hey, I need to just stop right now, refocus. Who am I trusting in? I need to trust in you, God, not myself or my circumstances. And so you just kind of liken something in the scriptures about what you liken to as pennies in your path. And so I want you to share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, there's a couple of things with the pennies in your path. First of all, I love that idea because, and I do think the people that find the pennies that are the ones that are looking for the pennies. I think sometimes we want to say, well, maybe I didn't see God work in this way, or I didn't know that. Well, I think you have to be paying attention. Number one, like you said, you have to be focused. You have to be looking, and you have to be expecting God to do something. He's gone before you for this day, and he's kind of already got it mapped out for you. And you've got to be watching to say, where's he going to use me? What's he going to do? What pennies is he going to put in my path today? I like Hebrews because to me, when they talk about the Faith Hall of Famers, that's a list of pennies. That's a list of people who did it well. And when you're reeling off those giants of scripture, Abraham, Noah, David, Joseph, I mean, that's the group that we look to and we say, that's a great cloud of witnesses who ran their race well. That's tough to say, ran their race well. So that's kind of who I think about sometimes. And to me, that's, although they are giants of scripture, they were definitely just human beings. I mean, and flawed, all of them very flawed. So it was not as if they did something that I can't do. We still had the same God. And so, the God of Abraham, the God of Moses, it's still my God. And so if he can use their lives and their flaws, he can certainly use mine. And I think then it becomes, well, do I trust you to do that? Do I believe you for that? Is there that yes in my spirit to say, I'm willing to let you do this? Because at the end of the day, I could offer nothing and you could offer everything and we're going to succeed. And so it's a trust issue, at that point.
No, man, that's just so powerful. And it's like, I imagine, I want to encourage some of our listeners to even go back and just kind of re-listen into those last few statements, because, one of the things too about when God makes it clear what our race looks like, and we get that laser focus, and we're heading toward that, and thinking about them as it's so well known, the Hall of Faith, Hebrews 11. Sometimes we put them on a pedestal, like they're perfect. There's no way I can be like that. And we lose sight of how human they are, or, how human they were. And the fact that they struggled. They
Sure.
struggled
And
in,
said I can't.
yeah,
And
they
said I don't
struggled in
want to.
life. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. The very things we do. Sure.
Yeah. So,
And yet God used. So yeah, amazing
yeah.
things.
Yeah. So
Um,
we can get spiritually fit, and we can have that spirit of yes, Lord, in us. And then when we get the wrong concept, then it's going to be easy. God's going to pay the path, and we're just going to zoom on and fly through. And the reality, we look back at a lot of the Hall of Faithers, if you will, and look at how the faithful God was. uh, they also had to get over hurdles and speed bumps
sure.
sometimes, and get pulled out of potholes sometimes by the grace of God, by refocusing and trusting on Him. So the struggle is real, and I love that you point us back to the Hall of Faith like that and look at that.
And we've talked a lot about David in Pipeline, and I love the story of David. He definitely was flawed. And we've talked about the story of David getting ready for Goliath. And I know you do a dramatization, Jodi. And so I'm
I'm not doing
hoping
it here. I'm not doing
if
it.
not today, I hope that the listeners, the people that are watching, it'll just be a petition for Jodi to either post pictures, which I could do, or just do the full out dramatization, because it is life changing, of Jodi putting on the armor. So we talk about, David with Saul's heavy armor, and he couldn't function. He was just weighted down by, his stuff was physical stuff. It was the weight of that armor, and he was just not strong enough to handle that. Our baggage a lot of times is not that visible. It's things that are inside. It's intangible. It's guilt. It's regret. It's unforgiveness. It's whatever. It's a feeling or something we're dragging along, that baggage we're dragging through life. But it's still heavy at the end of the day. It's just like that armor. And David finally had to just drop the armor and say, I'm just going to go with God. And I have to trust God that I don't need all this extra stuff. I don't need to drag that around. At the end of the day, he knew it was God's victory, not his. And I love this message. And this has just really made me think a lot lately, and try to just change the way I am thinking about some stuff, because, when we drag those things, when we drag those intangible things through life and we let it hinder us, and we're not unhindered like Dan was, when we're hindered and we're weighted down, I feel like that God is just looking and going, it just makes me sad. I feel like he's just grieved. And I feel like he's thinking, I gave my son to die on a cross, so you don't have to do any of that anymore. And when I do that, when I decide that, each morning when I get up and I say, I'm going to drag unforgiveness, I'm going to drag guilt, regret, whatever it is, and I'm going to keep that so heavy on me that I can't do what God's got for me today, that I feel like I'm saying, you know what? Jesus's death on the cross wasn't enough. And I'm like, that's bothered me so much, because I'm like, I don't want that to be my life message. I don't want it to be that Suzanne lived her life like Christ wasn't enough. That death wasn't enough, because she still had to do these things. And so I've tried to look at it more like that and go, if you can get that truth in your mind, in your heart, his death was enough, then you can go, I'm going to let go of some of the other stuff. And now I'm free to open up to what you've got for me today.
Girl, that's good stuff. That is, I'm just letting that
We have to put
marinate
our
a little bit.
glasses on for this.
Yeah,
We're
you
putting our glasses on
put
here.
our glasses on.
This is serious now. It's getting real.
Because you wrote a blog to go along with this, and there was a quote in there that I thought, man, it's just strong with this. It's I think by someone named Carson. You wrote, all that matters is whether we honored God and stewarded the life and ministry he entrusted to our care. Man,
Right.
I mean, that's
It doesn't get any more clear than that.
right. And we want the one that says, well done, good and faithful, to be our Lord and Jesus, not somebody else.
Yeah. Not today, not in 2023, when, people are, that's who we're living for, the everyday thank yous, or you did good, or the pats on the back. that shouldn't be our well done. I love that he's like, there's one well done and it's the last one. And that's what you got to stay focused on. And when you do that, it immediately prioritizes and immediately focuses everything else up to that point.
Mhm.
That's just great. That's a great quote. I wish I had written that. I found it and I was able to like requote it, but it'd been really cool if I come up with it. So
I know
oh well.
sometimes I can be talking for an hour and I quote somebody and it's the quote they remember. I'm like, darn it, I wish I could have come over that. But then again, it's all about the Lord and the message that he wants them to hear. So if I can be a conduit using someone else's, God be the glory for that.
Even better.
So,
Yeah,
no.
exactly.
Yeah. So, so how, we were talking off air before we started recording how kind of one of the things that you can apply of living this out in your life with Levi of being in that foreshadow.
So I was thinking about, the way we run our race, and we're definitely living for that audience of one, but we're also tasked with being a example or a mentor, or one of those. We won't be a hall of faith, like in Hebrews, but we won't be in Scripture, obviously. But to be that to somebody, and I think about my little guy, Levi, and just I want him to look back on his life and go, my gran was my greatest encourager. She ran her race well. And I want him to be just inspired by that. I want him to see, what, she trusted God. She didn't just say it. It wasn't just words. It was real. Her faith was real. And, if I can do that at the end of my life, I feel like I will have pleased God. There's no doubt. And internally, I think that's just a great thing if you have grandchildren, to try to fuel their faith and be that person that's standing beside them, just going, you can do this, and encouraging them and having conversations. You may have an inroad with them that the parents don't. And so I just love that. And I think, especially as moms, and I know you feel this way, Judy.
We've only known each other for a little while. That's okay, Barbara.
I'm saying. Judy. I know you feel this way. Like, as a mom, we're wired to encourage our kids. I think we live their whole our lives like standing on the sideline. A lot of time it's literally on the sidelines, cheering them on at sporting events or academic things or whatever. But we also encourage them in their life. I mean, that's kind of our role. Is we want to be that cheerleader for them, because the world's not going to be your cheerleader. The world's going to tell you everything else. And so, goodness gracious, they need somebody saying you did it right. But yeah, as moms, I think we should be our children's biggest advocate and their biggest encourager, and the ones that are pointing them toward Christ every day. So, another goal is for them to run their race well.
Yeah,
I think that's huge.
It's about impacting generation after generation.
Sure.
I mean, that's part of the goal. So we always like to leave a question to our friends here on Pennies in Your Path. And one of the questions that we want to encourage you to ponder and answer is, if God desired to use only you to fulfill a specific purpose, is there a yes, Lord, in your spirit? And so we're going to leave that question with you. We'd love to hear back from you in the comments below. Suzanne, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you, as far as just wanting to dive deeper into what you're sharing, or to find out how to find your books? I know one of them you can easily get on Amazon. It's Blessed Be the Tie. But the other one, they may need to contact you.
Yeah, the other one is really out of print right now. We need to get more copies of that. I have copies of Blessed Be the Tie. If anyone's interested, I'm on Facebook, Suzanne Clark. And I'm also on Instagram, 67 Shades. Wasn't the best choice of names at the time. It sounded really good, way before 50 Shades of Grey. But let's just leave it with 17 shades more. You can edit that out if you need to.
That's beautiful. I love that. I love it. Thank you so much for being with us, Suzanne.
I had a great time.
Yeah, this is fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So friends, we hope that this has been encouraged into you, and that you've gotten some good tips on really how to refocus and be motivated to move your doubts in God to fully trust in Him. And so until next time, look for pennies in your path.